So, I have seven big stories for you on Sunday, January 19th, 2025. And Russia seems to be the poisonous thread that runs through each of these stories. It's really amazing to see. Okay, even indirectly. So, we'll start with this. Israel has officially announced a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip starting at 11:15 a.m. today. It seems one war has ended. Meanwhile, in the heart of Europe, Putin's war continues. Okay, and that's good that there's a ceasefire. I don't know how long it'll last, but if you remember when this started, shortly, right around that time, Russia was involved with having talks with Hamas or having talks with Hezbollah or involved with Syria and Syria with Iran and Iran with Russia, and they were all cozy together. Okay, so Russia tends to like other dictators and gets along great with them. Hamas T handed mediators a list of hostages to be released on January 19th. Israel's national security minister resigned in protest against the deal with Hamas. I don't know how long it'll last because they don't seem to have lost any will. They just seem to want to have time to regroup, but that's where they are right now. Okay, second big story, the pile of Russian hardware at the piers of Tartus. I'm certain that if they are allowed to leave, then only when Russia gives something in exchange. Like the Syrians are like they don't like the Russians. Like they remember what the Russians did to them. That's the way it is now in Syria. So Russian military vehicles and equipment are still waiting evacuation in Tartus, Syria, and a new satellite imagery shows. And there's lots of vehicles and equipment just staged, waiting for something to happen. I'm sure Bogdanov is sitting there salivating, trying to think how he can do something about that because he can make it a lot easier for them to not have to transport a lot home. The Russian ships, such as Sparta 1 and Sparta 2, are still barred from entering the port of Tartus, Syria. They're circling next to the Syrian coast. A lot of Russian equipment still waiting on the piers, as we just described. Okay, Syria's new government has also sanctioned Russia, banning imports of Russian goods as it continues to prohibit access to the port of Tartus. Wow, they're the Syrian government hates what Russia was doing with the Assad government so much that they are sanctioning the Russians. Okay, big story number three. So we know that a couple days ago, Russia signed this 20-year comprehensive strategic partnership with Iran. Okay, so again, Russia and Iran. They're trying to use Iran to get around things. And I went over extensively like what this meant. But then the delusional head of the VTB bank is so eager about cooperation with Iran that he's vowing to beat the SWIFT banking system by creating an alternative. Now, I don't know how well that's going to go. They can do it perhaps with Iran. They're not going to be able to do that kind of thing with China, which is what they would really need, a powerhouse like China or India. But China and India still want to be able to trade with the West, so they're not at all inclined to do that, at least not at this point. He claims it's merely a matter of administrative decisions and some technology. I'm not as enthusiastic or optimistic that he'll be able to pull this kind of thing off. Now, Institute for the Study of War is putting this out. A Russian victory is an Iranian victory. Those concerned with the growth of Iran's military power, ambitions, and aggressions in the Middle East must recognize the degree to which Iran's fortunes rise and fall with Russia's. I think that's right. I think that's spot on. And who's most concerned about that? The United States and Israel. And so, yeah, the Trump administration is just about to start, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But Iran unveiled an underground naval missile base at an undisclosed Gulf location. State TV said 2 days before the start of U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's second term in the White House. It was unveiled at a time when tension with Washington is widely expected to rise. Iranian leaders are concerned that Trump might empower Netanyahu to strike the country's nuclear sites while tightening U.S. sanctions on its oil industry. So Iran's very concerned, and Putin just got even closer to Iran. Okay, let's switch gears to the next story. Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico criticized opposition members of parliament for visiting Kyiv, calling it a gesture of flattery, and accusing them of kissing Zelensky's ring while promising NATO support for Ukraine. Well, okay, so I get that you have an internal, like this party doesn't like that party, the one out of power is doing something different than the one in power. That's a very common kind of thing. But Fico was just meeting with Putin. And was that not kissing the ring? I mean, like what? So, okay. Fico vowed to block Ukraine's NATO bid, which they are very able to do. Either Hungary or Slovakia could do that and keep them out. Oppose troop deployments and veto EU aid or keep them out of the EU, claiming such actions could lead to World War III. He declared, "I am Slovakia's prime minister, not a servant of Ukraine." Okay, so, but what's the hand behind that? Again, with each of these stories, the poisonous thread tends to be Russia. Okay, Maduro's time is running out. This is in Venezuela. Donald Trump's team aims to overthrow Venezuelan dictator. The administration of U.S. President-elect Donald Trump is working on a strategy to bring down Nicolas Maduro's regime in Venezuela without resorting to military action. According to Axios, citing military advisors within Trump's team, the goal is for Maduro to face a fate similar to that of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. Well, wait a minute. Should they be doing anything? Well, let's understand that Maduro has actually he's wanted by the United States government for drug dealing and narco. I don't even know what the term is, narco transit or something. And yeah, so he's been helping amplify the drugs into the United States. $25 million is on his head, according to the United States government. So, okay. And then we see something like this. Joe Wilson, he's the Republican congressman from South Carolina's 2nd District. Joe Wilson says, very soon Maduro and Ivanishvili will be neighbors with Assad in Moscow. But where are they going to go when war criminal Putin's empire of lies collapses? It's a good question. What would happen? Again, the tie that's tying Georgia and Maduro and Syria and Iran and all these things together are tied together by the Russians. It's really interesting to see. Here's Joe Wilson again. He's getting Zorbashvili, the former president of Georgia, together with Rubio. Hopefully she can have some influence about what poison Russia is bleeding into Eastern Europe. I'm grateful to bring together two great patriots, President Zorbashvili and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, to safeguard the strong U.S.-Georgia relationship and to defeat the tyrannical Ivanishvili regime. So again, Wilson's up to everything he's doing is really useful for all of Eastern Europe. Okay, President Salome Zurishvili, the former president of Georgia, who is in the United States to attend Donald Trump's inauguration on January 20th, said that she would urge him to tell Russian President Vladimir Putin in any future call or meeting, hands off Georgia, hands off the Caucasus. So again, even she can be a good influence for Ukraine based on just like, look what he's doing over here. Look what, like, he's not just in Ukraine, he's doing this to us. Okay, so, all right, now, you know that Joe Biden's last full day is today. And here Dmitry Medvedev says, Joe, the Walking Dead is gone. He left a grim legacy for his successor. As things stand, full normalizations of relations between the U.S. and Russia is impossible. And frankly speaking, it's unclear whether we actually need it. So the Russians are doubling down in their tough talk just before Donald Trump is elected. I don't know that that's going to go well. Biden's belongings are being removed from the White House ahead of Trump's inauguration so that Trump can move in right after he's sworn in, and we'll see how that all plays out tomorrow. It's moved indoors as opposed to an outdoor inauguration because of the weather. Okay, Ukraine has convinced Trump that talks with Russia too early will be fatal. This is according to The Telegraph. The Ukrainian authorities first want to exhaust Russia so that Putin does not consider himself master of the situation in the war. Now, I put this out at the very beginning of the year. So the war will be over in Ukraine, and then you voted on this. And in January, because of Trump, like January 20th, first day, right? Or summer of 2025, or by the end of 2025, or 2026 and beyond. And so in January, only 2% of you said that, even though nothing had come to light yet at this point when you voted on this, because you know better, right? You've been paying attention, you know better. It was going to be like a week later after this that Trump said, yeah, you know, we hope to get something in 6 months. And his general who was going to be negotiating Kellogg said, we hope to get something moving in 90 days or something along those lines. So 2% said in January because of Trump. By summer of 2025, only 8% think that. By the end of this year, only a third of you think that. And the rest say 2026 or beyond. Now, again, I put out this poll last night, and there were 6,000 votes on this particular poll last at the beginning of the year, almost 7,000 votes. Now, on this poll I put out last night, I got 3.6 thousand votes, so that's enough. I said set aside politics and personal feelings for or against Trump. Let's suppose that you had to place a $10,000 bet. Given what you know about Trump's ego, bombast, transactional nature, and his unpredictability, you would bet that either Trump will be good for Ukraine, or Trump will be good for Russia, or Trump will be good for neither. I just can't predict, right? You just, I don't know. And you would have expected, especially if it was just before the campaign back in early November, you would have expected this would be 80 to 20 or higher of Trump will be good for Russia. But that's not what you all said. Trump will be good for Ukraine, 17%, as opposed to Trump will be good for Russia at 25%. So, yeah, that's not too far different. And so those of you said 68 or 58% said, I just can't predict. Okay, I get that. Trump is a wild card. It's yet to see what he'll do. We'll find out starting tomorrow what direction he's going to start taking us. I mean, it won't be all solved tomorrow, certainly, but starting tomorrow, he's going to be in charge, and we can quit saying stuff about Joe Biden, and we can start saying stuff about Trump, and that's okay. I mean, he's fair game as he takes office. So, but it's really interesting that so many people said that Trump will be good for Ukraine. There's such a large proportion comparatively, and we just can't predict is what the majority were saying. Okay, I talked about TikTok in just my last video, so please go back and watch that if you haven't already. And it's about to snow where I live, and I've seen snow once in the 13 plus years that I've lived where I live in the American South. So it's about to be a big day. But this guy, I think it's a genius. Look at that. How about that? I think I'm the only guy with a snow shovel on my block. That's how rare it is that we get snow where I live. How about that? All right. So I just thought I'd end on a happy note. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, and the subscribes. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.